Hello and welcome to the webinar, a practical guide to understanding the essentials of Google Analytics. My name is Philip Smith and I'm the Head of News and Content at Gorkana, and I'm delighted to be your host and moderator today. In this webinar, we're going to be looking at Google Analytics, but as well as a practical guide to getting started, we're also going to put analytics in context and show how PRs are currently using Google Analytics in their day-to-day work. As we know, to be a successful PR and communications professional, you need to measure and understand the impact of your work. Google Analytics is one tool which can help with measurement, and as the standard for basic web analytics, it can give a view of how web and mobile properties are being used. Also, it is often underused, particularly in the comms industry. So, some of the topics to be explored in this webinar include background on PR KPIs, traditional metrics, and the challenges proving impact. Overview of Google Analytics and what it can track. A practical guide to getting started, creating a measurement and key considerations. How comms teams are using Google Analytics, benefits of using Google Analytics in comms. Well, as you can tell, it's a big subject. So I'm joined today by two experts on Google Analytics and its application in PR from the agency Threepipe. I've just realized that's two from Threepipe. We have Nick Christensen, Head of Analytics and Digital Operations at Threepipe, and Rebecca Wharmby, PR Manager at Threepipe, who will give us the lowdown on what Google Analytics can do, how it can be used by comms professionals, and share some practical tips on how PRs can make use of GA in their day-to-day work. Before we begin with a presentation from Nick and Rebecca, let me tell you a little bit more about them. Nick is Head of Analytics and Digital Operations at Threepipe. He oversees all digital operations at Threepipe, having joined the company in 2016 following its acquisition of Spot Digital. He works on a wide range of clients, including Panasonic, Jack Wills, and L'Occitane. Rebecca is PR Account Manager at Threepipe. She works on the consumer PR team at the agency, working on a range of food and drink clients, including Gruppo Campari, Rachel's, Dole Packaged Foods Europe. Nick, Rebecca, welcome to the webinar. Nick and Rebecca are going to kick off with a 20-25 minute presentation in a minute. And when they finish, we're going to run a Q&A session. So please help me put Nick and Rebecca on the spot and send in your questions. Use the panel on the right of your screens and let us know what you'd like to know about Google Analytics. And we'll get to as many of those questions as possible. Also, if we do run out of time tackling all those questions, we'll also be on Twitter for an hour or so after the live webinar, those details to follow. Anyway, I think at this stage, that's more than enough from me. Please do send in your questions as the webinar goes along. Nick, I'm going to hand over to you and Rebecca. Let's start the presentation.
Great. Thank you for the introduction, Philip. It's a very good one. And thank you, everybody, for attending the webinar today. So hopefully today we'll be able to show you how you can use Google Analytics to measure the impact of PR activity.
So just to start, we thought we'd begin by looking at the media landscape, which we all know is constantly evolving, and it's no secret that media consumption is increasingly moving online. So we know print media is declining at a rate of 7 to 12% per year. Brits are spending around 7.4 hours a day online, so a majority of the working day. There's 72% of 25 to 34-year-olds and 49% of 55 to 64-year-olds that are accessing their news online. There's lots more opportunities for us to be reaching our target audience in new ways. So while it's bad news for traditional PR and kind of those PRs that are still depending on traditional press releases and traditional media to get their message out there, it's actually a great opportunity for those PRs who are adapting and using new tools when it comes to getting the message out there, but also how they are evaluating their campaigns and presenting the results to the client. And it's actually really good news for us in terms of demonstrating a return on investment to the client. So if we just take a look at what success usually looks like for PRs. So in the past, traditional evaluation metrics have included things like reach, AVE, column inches, sentiment, and brand mentions. And while we still use some of these, and the client does like to see them, I mean, we still use reach, we still look at sentiment and brand mentions because they are important. There is a lot more that we can be looking at to demonstrate the value of our work. The PR industry has long been criticised for its sort of fluffy metrics, and there has been questions about the reliability of these in indicating success. So it's really how we start to move forward and really demonstrate that our work is valuable. So we've seen an increase in the number of clients that have said, you know, this is great, this coverage is great, but what is the value to my business? And most importantly, what they want to know is, where is that ROI? So this is what today we want to look at, is how GA can help us with that. So, delving deeper to prove our impact. Thanks to GA, we've now got access to a sophisticated suite of tools that can help us move from the fluffy metrics we've just looked at to more well-considered hard data that actually proves our value, and you can actually show what your work is actually achieving. So moving from the left there, some of the metrics we've just gone through, over to the right, where we can look at things like number of shares, referral traffic, traffic behavior, and conversions. And these are just some of the things that Nick's going to run through next, but just things to think about when reporting back to clients.
So for those of you who are relatively new to analytics, we'll just quickly just touch on some of the key points of it before we get into kind of the finer details with what we can track. Google Analytics is a very powerful platform with a lot of benefits for measuring PR activity. It's quite simple to use. You get a code that you put across your website, and what that code does is it tracks traffic and that traffic behavior across your website. You know, one of the greatest things about Google Analytics is that you don't need to be a programmer or a data scientist to be able to go in and start to get some good insight that you can actually use across your campaigns. Why is this important? It really allows us to align PR activity with business objectives, with the metrics that actually matter for businesses. And it also allows us to prove the impact of those PR efforts by providing insight that's based on real data as opposed to some of the fluffier metrics that Rebecca touched on. One of the other things we also use it for a lot is to identify new trends and opportunities where we can use and refine and improve existing campaigns. To get started with analytics, you simply need to sign up to Google Analytics, in which after that you'll receive a unique tracking code, and that tracking code has to be placed across your website. And this is probably something more for your developers to do, but the key thing is that this code needs to be across every single page across your website as opposed to just the home page or one of the inner pages. Once you do this, you'll receive an interface when you log in, and it looks quite daunting at first. But we just want to break it down quickly into a few different areas of that interface so you can understand what you're looking at and where you can go from there. If you look at number one, that is the reporting navigation. So clicking through within this area gives you a lot more information about those users, which we'll go through in the next slide. Number two is where you're currently at within the report. That's in the reporting header. Number three are segments that you can apply to any report to kind of dig deeper into that report. Number four are report tabs. Depending on what view you're in within Google Analytics, you can kind of filter out that information a lot more. Number five is a graph that just shows you quite quickly if there are any trends within whatever you're looking at within the report. And underneath that, you have number six, which are the data tables. So that's pretty much the raw data that you see within the charts. Talking about the reporting view, you can see that it's kind of grouped into four key areas within Google Analytics. The first of those areas is the audience. So this is about who is actually visiting the website, how old they are, what gender they are, what else they're interested in, where they're actually navigating from. The second area is the acquisition view, which shows where traffic is actually coming from, the traffic going to your website. So you can see whether they're new visitors and whether they've been to the website before, whether it's through organic or whether it's through different paid campaigns. And I guess probably the most important for PR is the referral sources. So this is where traffic is coming from other websites from different placements. So once you can see the acquisition view, you look into the next area, which is what those people do on the website and once they arrive, so how they behave, how they engage with different content, and bounce rate, which you'll see a lot more of when you're looking at analytics. And what this tells you is how often the people leave the website without viewing another page. And then what we want to do is to kind of align all of these with what actions people take within the conversion views of Google Analytics. So this looks at whether they transact and what different goals we've set, whether they've turned into business leads. And I think before we get into measuring PR, I think it's really important to kind of understand how different channels and different activity reach people at different stages of their user journey. And quite often, I see that PR is it provides more assistive touch points. So what this means is that this is before people actually make a decision, before they buy something. They're reaching the website through different sources. Analytics is by default more focused on last click. And what this means is the last interaction somebody has with the website where they take an action. So that usually gets the credit. And we think PR should get more credit because it's supporting a lot of those last click interactions. So what can we measure for PR? These are a few of the different areas which we're going to go into in the subsequent slides. The first is referral traffic from PR placements. So what this means is that if we receive coverage and they link to the website, if that link gets clicked on, this will be shown in the referral traffic report within Google Analytics. What we can also look at is the impact on brand search demand. We look at direct traffic visiting the website, and we look at what actions and goals they complete on the website. And we can also look at multi-channel funnels, which we'll go to in a bit more detail. So before we start any campaign, it's really important to define, I guess, the objectives so that we can track it properly. And kind of group this into three different areas, and it's understanding the audience that we want to reach, how and where we want to reach them, and what action we want them to take. The audiences report in Google Analytics isn't enabled by default. You need to enable advertising reporting features and demographic and interest reports in property settings within your Google Analytics account. And once you do this, you'll be able to see a lot of information about the different people that are visiting your website. And what we find is, this report is really good because we can, firstly see of that audience that are reaching the website, which ones take the action that we want them to take. And then we can define metrics of how we reach these audiences, and this is what we can set our KPIs against. The referral traffic reporting can be found within the acquisition view. And we touched on this a little bit already, that this shows where people are arriving, how people are arriving to the website from other different websites. And I guess in this chart, what you can see under sources, all the different websites that are referring traffic. You can see how much traffic has been sent, what proportion of that is new traffic that hasn't been to the website before, how engaged that traffic is to the bounce rate figure, the lower the better here really, how many pages they're spending on the site, how long they're spending on the site, and in this example, we've just put a goal of the user registration to see what proportion of that traffic converts into a registration on that website. So the behavior view is, the referral view is really great for understanding how qualified the traffic is that we're driving from different referral sources. I think with PR, we know that in a successful PR campaign, what we're doing is we're increasing awareness for that brand. And, that increased awareness has not traditionally been measured, but what it does is that, if there is an increase in awareness, we can see that more people are searching for the brand, and the Search Console Queries report under acquisition shows us how much more people are searching for the brand, how much more likely are they to click through to the brand once they actually search for it. So we find that this report is useful to kind of benchmark the interest and the and then to try to overlay our PR campaign to see whether that's actually causing spikes in traffic and spikes in interest within the brand. Direct traffic is another view within the acquisition report under channels. And what this shows is people who type in the website directly into the URL bar, or whether they go back through a bookmark. And it's quite common that we see after a PR campaign that direct traffic to the website increases. So it's definitely a good idea not to ignore this view, to kind of overlay this as well in relation to, I guess, more referral traffic, more brand searches. And I guess one of the important things here is to try to exclude seasonality, because with a lot of our different clients, they have different natural spikes throughout the year. So we want to create a good comparison period for seasonality to prove that we're actually creating more direct traffic to the website. And then once we have all that traffic, we want to make sure that they take the actions that we want them to take. And in GA, you can pretty much match anything against the goals that we've set. I think the key point here is that goals aren't just transactions. We can set up goals for the amount of time people spend on a website, whether they sign up to an email database, whether they browse a certain amount of pages, whether they browse a specific page. So, we're quite open with the goals that we can set, and it's really important to not think about goals just as transactions, considering that we believe that PR is more of an assistive channel, as a lot of those goals will be around the actions that people take before, I guess, the final decisions that they make. Multi-channel funnels is a view that can be found within the conversions report within Google Analytics. And what this shows is that people visit a website on multiple occasions, and we can see that there are different traffic sources that lead to the final conversion. So we can start to filter out that increase in PR traffic, what this does in relation to the full user journey. And I think this allows us to kind of give more credit to some of the supporting channels and the supporting traffic to the website. And we can assign different values to the credit that we want to give. So it just builds a bigger picture of the audience that we're attracting, what they're doing, and how we get them to do the actions that we want them to take. So to recap what we discussed, it's really important to understand that the value that the PR adds, and create an appropriate measurement plan that measures that. Don't forget to look at the different types of audiences that are being driven, and focus on actions that support conversions. Also, traffic from PR is not just limited to referral reports. As we've discussed, we can see that there's an increase in brand searches, there's an increase in direct traffic, and also use insights and trends to refine and improve the campaign.
So just to kind of summarize what Nick has just gone through, I think one thing to point out is that if you've got your GA set up correctly on your site, and everything's set up before a campaign or before any activity, it's really important not only for the pre-campaign planning phase, but also for post-campaign evaluation. So gone are the days, I think, that PRs can go into campaigns blindfolded. So not only do we study a client's brief and objectives before planning the activity that we're going to execute, but we can now also delve into all of this data and really understand the target audience, their online behavior, and their interests before we even begin putting the campaign plan together, which is really important. So we can get to know our audience. So for example, some of the things we've outlined here, so on-site search trends. This is such a valuable thing to look at, just looking at what people are searching for on your site. The things that you might be, if it's a specific product that you're pushing, or a specific tool that you house on your website, it may not always be what you have planned. That is actually what your audience are searching for. And this is something that we've noticed with a lot of our clients, actually, that particularly have a wide range of products. Sometimes what we have planned for the year in terms of our PR outreach for their product is not always what people are searching for. It might be some more obscure product that hasn't had any dedicated PR activity for a long while. And we've been able to go back to the client and say, actually, there's a lot of appetite for this product, and we suggest at this time of year, particularly when the traffic is spiking, we should be pushing this. And that's really valuable to clients, and they're really open to hearing that feedback. There's other things we can look at, so interests, themes and topics, and seasonality. So themes and topics, seasonality, all kind of linked together. There may be something that your audience are searching for that isn't directly related to your brand, but is a theme that actually links quite nicely, and something that you can build into your campaigns. And then seasonality. So we see this a lot with different clients. For example, a bathroom client we've been looking at, we found that traffic peaks at bank holidays because that's when people are generally doing their home improvements. So actually, should we be focusing our big campaigns on bank holiday weekends when it's really going to have the biggest impact and create as much buzz and brand awareness about that brand as possible? So these are all things that we can keep in mind and analyze in the pre-planning phase. And this would be to give us ultimately a better chance of success with our campaign. And then equally, when it comes to evaluating your campaign and reporting back, it is super valuable. So circling back to clients, increasingly asking PRs to kind of prove their value and demonstrate the return on investment. GA really allows us to use these hard metrics to prove that. So the things that Nick's talked through, traffic to the site, if we can directly relate a spike in traffic to the website to a big campaign that we've been working on, that's great news, and it really just reiterates to the client that value that you're adding. Again, with referrals, so where are your audience coming from? If it can be traffic referrals from coverage you've achieved, or if you are also running your campaign on social media, if you can prove that it's driving traffic to the website, then it's great news. And then behavior, so looking at how your audience are searching, what time, what platforms. It's all things that we can relate back to your campaign. And then finally, completion of goals. And as Nick said, it doesn't have to be an e-commerce site. It doesn't have to be, goals don't have to be a product purchase, but it can be a newsletter sign up. It can be, if it's brand awareness, it's them spending so long on a page that there's content on there. If you can see that they're spending enough time on there to read it or use a particular tool that's housed on that page, then you're demonstrating that you've completed that goal, and that's a result of your campaign, which is really valuable, and it's really just demonstrating your worth as a PR agency.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Nick. Now, everyone who's on this webinar, please do send in your questions. And we've got a good 10-15 minutes or so to put Nick and Rebecca on the spot about Google Analytics and PR. I can see quite a few questions coming in, but do please keep sending them through and we will get those answered. Also, if we don't get to your question in this actual live webinar, we will be on Twitter. And if you use the hashtag Threepipe and that's 3 spelt out, pipe, Threepipe, we will make sure that your questions get answered, whether in this webinar or on Twitter. Now, I can see so many questions, but actually I'm going to start, first of all, Nick, with a question to you about mistakes in Google Analytics, actually, and that is, what's the most common mistake people make when they're using Google Analytics for the first time?
I think probably the most common mistake is looking at some of the big aggregate metrics without digging a little bit deeper to understand, what's actually happening. For example, you can say that conversion rate has gone up from a certain traffic source, but unless you dig down into it, you can't see actually what is driving that increase. So it's about, for us, it's about moving away from the big aggregate metrics and looking at more the audience and what people are doing on the website.
Yeah. I can say, actually, from my experience, having worked with a number of publishers over the years, the mistake I've always had is people forgetting to tell developers that they should be putting the code into the page you want to measure. Yeah. So I would go back even more basic with that. But it's certainly something I would say is any error you want to measure, make sure that code's getting put in the page. Now, we've got some great questions here. Nick, I'm going to start with you on a few of these. And I think, actually, before I do that, I just want to reassure everyone who's asked this question, we will make the slides available at the end of the webinar to you all. We will also make sure a recording of the webinar is available for you. So do keep sending your questions in, and we will make sure that you've got slides and the recording to share with people. Now, I think the first thing is a question. Actually, this sounds like a question of orientation, Nick. I think. Where do you find the on-site search trends, please?
That is in the behavior report under on-site search. This has to be configured first to show which queries are being used on the website. It's a report within the behavior view of Google Analytics.
Great, thank you. The next one's a bit of a compliment, but then there is a question about traffic. So Nick, again, to you. Thanks for this, good session. Does GA let you check if increases or decreases in traffic are statistically significant?
No. I mean, with a short answer, I mean, I think that's something for you to take out of Google Analytics to see whether that is, significant for your business. So, if you've increased from 5 to 15, and that's quite a big change, but I think it doesn't tell you that change is statistically significant.
Do you at Threepipe have a rule of thumb about sort of traffic? Do you sort of get excited if there's a 1% rise, or is there actually, do you sort of say, well, no, we really need to bear it in context, or see it?
Well, I think it's really about context. It's about the size of the business. If it's an enterprise-sized business with a lot of traffic already, a 2% increase is quite a nice increase for us. But if you're kind of a startup, you should be expecting much bigger increases on a monthly basis, and with expecting to see double-digit increases in those situations. So on a case-by-case and depending on the size of the business.
Okay. Now, what about news sources? So there's the question about, can you track particular news sources in GA? You
can if there's a referral from those news sources, and there's a link from those news sources. It will come up within the referral reporting in Google Analytics.
Right. So it depends on there being a referral there.
Yes. If they've read the article and then they've searched on search for it and they've come to the website, and then we won't be able to match it up.
Right. Okay. Another question about significance for you, Nick. How do we know if the data is accurate, and what if the data isn't significant enough to report on?
Well, how do we know? I think we tend to use Google Analytics in conjunction with other data sources as well. So a lot of our clients will look at their backend data, their business intelligence information, and we do a lot of work around making sure that those transactions match up. I think once we're comfortable with that, we're quite happy with that Google Analytics is reporting accurately. The only thing to look out for is when you are filtering a large amount of information, you can get sampled reports. What Google does is they take a proportion of the traffic and they estimate the rest of it. It's normally quite accurate, but what we say is under 30% or so. You may want to shorten your filters and make sure that sampling a little bit less than it is.
Okay, great, thank you. And now, Rebecca, a question for you about measuring the impacts of PR if it isn't linked to a website. So you talked about a lot of metrics about on and offline PR. So this is a question which is a really interesting idea, is how can you measure the impact of a PR? I think that is actually, how do you measure the impact of PR if it isn't linked to our website?
I guess, at the beginning we said, there's these fluffy metrics that we've used. But like I said, we still do use these metrics. They are still valuable and our clients still want to see them. So reach figures, although they're not a direct indication of how many people have read that article, it does give you a good indication of, how many people have seen it. And things like key messages, so having them set up in advance with your clients so you really know what the target is of getting those key messages in that coverage. I think if you can report on the number of if you're not linking to a website, maybe you're linking, if you've got any links to social media or Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever you're linking to in your coverage, or if there's a call to action in your coverage that isn't a link, if that's included in there, if you can track that and show, 80% of our coverage has a call to action, that is obviously pre-agreed with the client. I think that's the key things to be tracking.
Excellent, thank you. Now, of course, the PR is just part of the wider marketing mix in many instances. So, Nick, can I ask you about how you understand where PR fits in with Google Analytics into the wider universe? I think Peso is a great example of this in terms of paid, earned, social, and owned media. So this question is, what if there are other non-PR campaigns also going on at the same time? How do you separate PR from the other campaigns? Sounds very easy, Nick. It's very
quite a challenging one. I think we just have to be quite smart with the different campaigns that we run. I think if there are multiple campaigns, if we can do things like setting up separate tracking for different campaigns, then that can be viewed within the campaigns report. But even taking a step back from that, we can look at when campaigns are running, we look at exact dates, and then start to tie it up to the different traffic patterns that we're seeing in GA. But I guess the first part of the question is really about where PR fits into this, and I think you touched on that within the webinar, and that it's more of an assistive discipline where we're actually raising awareness, we're reaching people not at the last click stage of the user journey. So that's kind of where it fits into it.
Great, and as you can expect, we've got lots of questions about first and last click, so we're going to come on to those in a minute. But I think there's another really interesting question, which is, I suspect, hinting at the ideal, and that is, what does your ideal measurement plan look like? So, Nick, is there such a thing as an ideal measurement plan, and what would your suggestion be when someone is sitting down and setting out that measurement plan?
Well, I think we covered that in one of the slides within the webinar, and it's defining the audience really of who we want to reach, and to understanding that audience, where we expect to reach them, and then what actions we want them to take on the website. It's quite simple, really. It's 3 questions, and that's kind of the basis of any measurement plan. It's reaching the people that we want to reach and getting them to do things that we want them to do.
Great. I suspect we get a lot of questions like this, and I can see that we're getting quite a variety of them, and they are about how people can access certain things in Google Analytics. So this one is, actually, I think it's a phrase easier read than said, but I shall try and do it. How do I get to the multi-channel funnel? My report is only showing organic. How do I set this up to include all traffic?
The multi-channel funnel view is within the conversions view of Google Analytics, and in order for this to be enabled, you either have to have goals configured or e-commerce transaction tracking configured. And once you have this, it'll work backwards from that goal or that transaction of the user path to get to that goal or transaction.
Great, and thank you for that question. I was going to say also, we've been sent a few offline, and we will make sure that the Threepipe team follow up on those after this webinar. As I've also said, if we don't get to your question, you will have a chance to ask them on social media. Use the hashtag on Twitter, which is, of course, hashtag ThreepipeGA, and that's 3 spelt out, and you will see it on your screen. And I'm going to ask you a few more questions like that, actually, about configuration and so on. So here is one about, you guys talked about configuration. Would things like enabling advertising report features, etc., need to be done by a specialist?
No, actually, that's pretty straightforward. You go into the admin section of Google Analytics, and there are the tracking settings, property settings, and it's 2 clicks, 2 buttons, really, and then you're enabled.
Great. In fact, I'm going to make a promise here from Nick that if you do find that a struggle, let him know, because he suggests it's very easy. What about referral traffic again? We've got another good question here about referrals, and I think this is also linking a little bit to what we said about news sources. But let me just ask the question, Nick. Do you have any other ways to track referral traffic from a site that won't have a link in their article on your company stroke brand? Looking like a no, I can tell everyone on this webinar.
Yeah, I think that won't be possible. There has to be a link on there.
Okay, thank you. How do you know when the best time is to measure the impact? It can't be time effective to continuously monitor referral traffic, for instance. Or is it?
You don't need to continuously monitor. There's also, we didn't go through in the webinar, but you can set up intelligence alerts so that when traffic increases or decreases by a certain percentage, you can have an alert sent to your email, and then you can maybe take action from those alerts. So it's not a case that you need to watch it 24 hours a day. You can kind of speed that up by setting up a few alerts and kind of being smart with how you configure analytics.
Great. Well, thank you, Nick. You're covering a lot of ground, and I'm now going to give you the last click, first click question, or one of them actually. So a lot of last clicks tend to be voucher sites. First clicks sound really helpful. How do you make sure you're seeing just first click information?
By default, Google Analytics is last click, so you will have to go to the multi-channel funnel view to see first click. And then you'll be able to see the value of first click, middle click, any click interactions with the website. So you have to go to the multi-channel funnel view to see this.
Great. Of course, one of the challenges, particularly if you're working in an agency and you're working in a partnership, is trying to get some of this information from a third party or, say, access to client information. So, Nick, in terms of this, there's a question here about how easy do you find it is to get access to clients' Google Analytics in order to do all this?
Some clients, it's very easy, and others, we have to, I guess, sign NDA, jump through a few hoops and stuff. I think that some clients are quite, they're quite concerned about keeping their data private, but generally, I think it's not an issue for us.
And in general, Rebecca, can I ask you, in terms of clients, is there a point at which some of this information really convinces them of the value of Google Analytics? Is there a sort of eureka moment where you say, actually, I can show you this and I can prove this, this metric is particularly useful? Are there things that you would say are particularly helpful to clients that help them convinced on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was just about to say then, we're starting to see, clients are more and more open to providing you with this access, because once they've seen, the presentation you come back with, it's far more valuable to them. And things like I discussed earlier, insight into products that are being searched that they might not have looked at is really valuable for their kind of planning for the year. Also, in terms of the audience, things we looked at, just giving them more insight into their target audience. And a lot of clients have an idea of who their target audience is, but actually going back with data and saying, actually, there might be this secondary audience that you're actually overlooking, but we're finding that they're spending this much time on these pages of your website and what have you, and kind of giving them more insight into that. So I think there's lots of different elements in there that shows them the value of that and makes them open to giving you that access.
Excellent, thank you. So here's a new business question. I wasn't expecting this one, Nick. I think this one's going to be an interesting answer. How useful is Google Analytics in measuring new business for a PR agency?
I think it's very useful. I think it's not just, as we said, it's not just about tracking sales or transactions. We can measure leads, and in kind of some of the more advanced cases, we can actually look at kind of the full lifetime value of that lead, whether that lead actually turns into a sale. So there's definitely a lot that we can do around kind of lead gen with Google Analytics.
Great. Now, can I ask you, there's a great question here about different devices. It's a long question, so bear with me, but I think it's extremely interesting. Can GA measure a user's journey through different devices? If they're viewing the website on their phone, that might be the first click journey, but they may have actually clicked through from a social post on their computer. So won't that lead to two first click journeys independent of each other, but actually only for one user?
Yeah, this one is a little bit more advanced, and by default, Google Analytics doesn't measure those two different users as the same user. Because of the way Google Analytics works, you get cookies on one device, and that doesn't share between devices, so it starts a new session. There was a way around it. We can assign unique identifiers for users based on different devices that they're using, but we need a trigger for that. We need them to be able to log in from different devices, and then we can stitch up those similar users so we're not seeing, I guess, inflated numbers from the same user.
Great. Rebecca, I'm going to ask you a question in a minute referring to the media consumption figures that you quoted in the presentation and where they came from. But before I do that, Nick, if I could just ask you about another sort of, I guess it's configuration or an access question. Again, there's another compliment here. Thanks for the presentation. I'd like to ask, can you create your own report of traffic referrals by selecting specific websites in order to compare them?
Yes, you can. You can do this in multiple ways. You can either filter it directly in the view that you're looking at, or you can set a custom report that just looks at those different traffic sources. So there's, you can pretty much mix and match and set up whatever type of reporting you like within Google Analytics.
Great. So Rebecca, in terms of media consumption, there's a question about where did you get your stats from, RE hours a day online, and numbers of people getting news online, please. Are they from a variety of sources? Is that something that you can follow up on and direct people to?
Yeah, we can follow up on that. They are taken from a variety of sources. Some of them are Office of National Statistics, and then there's a few recent articles that have come out recently. So they've been taken from a selection, but we can follow up by all means and share them articles as well, because they're really useful to read.
Excellent. I will also do a plug for Gorkana's UK Pulse information, which from last year shows the state of the market in terms of media consumption, and we can always make that available. Do come to us at Gorkana.com to get details on that. Now, we're at the thorny issue of cost here, Nick, so very simple, straightforward question. Do you have to pay Google to get advanced information?
There is a premium version of Google Analytics, which you have to pay for, and there are a few extra features within that. But for most businesses, small to medium size, the free version of Google Analytics will be fine. I think it's once you start looking at, I suppose, trying to get unsampled data for a large amount of it, the premium version will be more accurate.
Excellent. Thank you. Here's a question, and I'm wondering if Threepipe have produced any of these themselves, or maybe they will do now. Any useful tutorial videos, brackets YouTube, to follow?
Well, actually, we are at Threepipe. We've started to produce a lot more tutorial videos, and we share them across our website and social channels, so Twitter and LinkedIn. So we've done about 6 or 7, I think, so far, touching on some of these subjects, and there's a few in the pipeline for the next few weeks. So definitely head over to the website and take a look at those, because they're very useful for people who are wanting to find out more.
Great, and someone very helpfully has pointed out Google do have tutorials too. So what I would say there is also, if you specifically ask for those through the comment box, I'm sure the Threepipe team will send you some links to get to. We have all your details if you've been on the webinar, and again, we will be sharing slides from the webinar as well as this recording after the webinar. We've got 5 minutes or so, I think, to finish off with a few more questions. I will make another plug, though, for the fact that the Threepipe team are on Twitter after this. So if we don't get to your specific question, do use the hashtag on Twitter, hashtag #ThreepipeGA, and that's 3 spelt out. You can see it on the screen. So do join in after the webinar if you still have some questions. Okay, I think, Nick, we've still got a few sort of configuration questions here, so a few of these may come to you. This one actually about the search bar. So this is, I have a Google search bar embedded in my website. How can I know what users search for there?
I think if you're using a Google search bar in your website, what will happen is, I think, I'm not 100% sure on this one, is that the searches will result in the keywords going to the URL, and what you need to do is configure Google Analytics to tell it that those are the searches that people are doing on the website. So just a couple of steps to measure that. Great.
I think this question is slightly out of context. It's still about search, but I think think this refers to how you understand the organic search terms that people are using. So the question is, can you still not see what search terms people have used to come to your site organically?
Well, actually, you can. Yeah, I know that due to privacy issues with Google, within the organic report, it's, a lot of the keywords are marked as not provided. But if you sign up to another tool from Google, which is Google Search Console, and connect that up to Google Analytics, you'll be able to see more of what the keywords that people are reaching the website on organic search.
Great. Now, Nick, here's the PDF question, which I know you've been looking for. So, do you have any tips for tracking PDF downloads? I'm struggling to figure this one out, so Nick might be able to help you with that struggle. So, do you have any tips for tracking PDF downloads?
Yes, you need to assign an event to the click on the PDF download, and I think if we can send it after this, but it's you set up the event, you set up the category and label, and then you'll be able to see that within the events view within Google Analytics to see what people are downloading.
Excellent. Well, I hope that's helped with your struggle. Do follow up, though, if that's still a struggle, and Nick can kindly offer a bit more help. Okay, here's another one about tracking users. Nick, how would GA track a user that's clicked through from a link on something like an email rather than a link on a secondary website?
If the email campaign is tracked properly, you'll be able to see email under one of the channels within the acquisition report. If it's not tracked properly, it may go into the other channel, but if you click into it, you'll be able to see kind of the email on there.
Brilliant. Okay, well, I think we've covered a hell of a lot of ground there with all those questions. Thank you so much for sending those in. I'm going to finish actually with just one thing, because we've covered so much ground. I'm going to ask both Rebecca and Nick for sort of the one thing they want people to take away from the webinar today, as Google Analytics is such a wide-ranging and complex area. Rebecca, shall I start with you in terms of what's the one thing you would urge people to bear in mind when they're thinking about Google Analytics?
I think for someone who's beginning, and for the first thing that I started to look at, which really showed its value to me when I was learning and getting my head around it, is definitely the referral traffic. So, you know, PRs, we're all about getting coverage, and that's still kind of one big part of our job. And I just think it's really valuable to see which coverage is driving traffic to the site, and because there's so many different ways of how clients see different media titles. So, you know, they love national media. It's great to still get that piece in print, but also it's great to see when, you know, maybe a lifestyle piece of coverage is driving a lot of traffic to the website, and actually going back to the client and saying, this has drove this much traffic, and really looking into that. I think that's a great place to start.
Excellent, thank you. And Nick, in terms of your last words on the subject?
Last words, well, I think, you know, I mentioned this within the webinar, but you know, you don't need to be a programmer or you know, a data scientist to really get started with Google Analytics. It's quite, you know, you can't really break it unless you start to configure it. So, you know, just really get started with it, start clicking around, and start looking at some of the different reports that you can find, and you'll definitely find some insight in there.
Excellent, thank you. And of course, on those slides that we'll be sharing, there is some very good information about how to get started and get stuck in with Google Analytics. Well, as just a final reminder, and if you're listening to the recording, this may not be the case, but the Threepipe team are on Twitter and available to answer your questions for the next hour or so. Use the hashtag #ThreepipeGA, as you can see on your screen. Actually, if you are listening to the recording, why don't you use the hashtag and see if anyone will answer? They may well be out there. But I really want to thank Threepipe for helping us with today's webinar. And of course, I want to thank Nick and Rebecca for their answers to all those questions, for their presentations. And I do hope that everyone listening in enjoyed the webinar and found it useful. Keep your eyes peeled for the next in our webinar series at Gorkana.com. And I want to say thank you to everyone who's been able to join us, and thank you so much for all of your questions. I hope you'll be able to join us again soon. The webinar is now over.